Hello and welcome to the USA Cares podcast. I'm your host, Matt Castor. I am joined with my good friend Anise McEwen. Hey, Anise.
Good day.
Welcome back. Welcome back.
Missed you.
Well, I've missed you too. It's been a little while, but we're excited to be back. Welcome to all of our listeners. If you are new to the USA Cares podcast, this is a podcast all about honoring our veterans, giving back to those who have given so much, hopefully giving a little hope and encouragement along the way. But we always like to bring in different guests, share some stories, share some insight, and so I'm really glad you're here. You can learn more about not only this episode, but other episodes at usacarespodcast.org, or learn more about USA Cares at usacares.org. Anise, I want to take a second and talk about one of our big sponsors, because this week we are wrapping up our Stars for Heroes campaign with Hardee's and Carl's Jr. around the country.
Yep.
And this has been just a huge deal. We are so thankful to Hardee's and Carl's Jr. for all of their commitment to this. For those of you who don't know, maybe you don't have a restaurant near you, Hardee's and Carl's Jr. sell paper stars in their restaurants. So if somebody comes in, they're like, hey, would you like to give $1 or $2 to help a veteran family? And they'll put their name on a star and stick it on the wall. Well, they're doing that at every location across the country. And the support that they're raising has been life-changing for so many of our clients. So we are so honored. So to CKE Restaurants, Hardee's, Carl's Jr., a big thank you from all of us as we wrap this up. It has been just a true blessing, and we're very thankful for you. Also want to make sure I mention Roller Die and Forming, McClellan Integrated Services, and all the other great companies and individuals who support our mission. So we have had a lot of change at USA Cares. It seems like it's constantly evolving.
Well, I think you're being a little humble, Matt. I will say you have finally proved useful to the organization.
I wouldn't go that far. But
you've and we'll be sharing some really exciting news for USA Cares in the coming weeks.
Yeah.
But you and your government relations team have been busy, and you've really had some huge achievements for the history of USA Cares. So
I really appreciate that.
Congratulations, good job.
Thank
finally.
you. Thank you. We're very thankful to be working in numerous states with some government officials. We are excited to, and I can say this now, we're excited to have been included in the Kentucky state budget as a line item this year, or for the next 2 years, for support for veteran families. So a big thank you to the Kentucky legislature for their support of USA Cares, but really for their support of veterans and making it a priority. Also very excited to be part of, to continue our work in Texas.
Yes.
And to work with the Texas Veterans Commission, who have awarded us $500,000 to continue our work in Texas. So
our most assisted state.
Yeah, it's like 20%, I think, of our support is going down to Texas right now. So not surprising with all the veterans in that community. But to all these folks who have decided to make veterans a priority, regardless of what state you're in, regardless of where you live, just recognizing the families that have sacrificed so much to help us and are stepping up to make a difference. In saying that veteran suicide has got to end. We got to figure out a way to support these families and not leave them on their own. So a big thank you to everybody involved. A big thank you to Carson Parker and Trace Chesser, who helped with this effort. So we'll take it from here, and we'll run with it, and we're going to support a lot of people. So
like we've been saying, 48 to go.
48 to go. That's right. That's right. It's like you finish one job and you start 48 others. So
you have exactly under Trace Chesser, you have 2 minutes to celebrate, and then next mission.
That's right. Well, let's get to our guest today, because I could ramble on and on, as you know, right? Mm-hmm. But we are honored to have. I always love it when we can have a guest in studio, and I can actually look at them and speak to them, and they're not over the phone. So this gentleman is a little intimidating to me. A little overwhelming because their career spans so long and they've accomplished so much. And I think we have a number of mutual acquaintances, and Mr. Bill Roby and
Yes.
I believe Robin Davis and a few others.
Yeah, small world.
Absolutely.
A few of our friends, yeah.
Yeah. So if I mess up your introduction, please correct me. But Ed Gallrein, now the pronunciation of that, I hope I got right, because we are in Kentucky and there's a little accent to it. Ed Gallrein is a retired career senior Navy SEAL officer. His career has spanned more than 30 years. His accomplishments are numerous. His accolades are impressive, to say the least. And we are honored not only that he's a native to Kentucky with all those accolades, but we're honored that he would come and sit with us here at USA Cares. So, Mr. Gallrein, welcome.
Well, call me Ed. Thank you for that warm welcome, and it's good to be here.
Well, it's great to have you.
Wait, and I got to add, it sounds like y'all got some upside with the 48 other possibilities out here, so you got work to do.
Yeah, we do have work to do, and we
got
invite you to
opportunity.
come alongside and help us all the way.
I'm all in.
Yeah, it's hard to figure out how to be in all those places at once, but we're working on that. So, so your career has been long. Can we back up to why did you decide to join the military in the first place?
Well, I'll tell you, I was at Murray State University. It was in 1983, and I walked by a table in the Student Center where Navy officer procurement officers were there setting up their materials. And I went up and started a conversation with them and asked them, what's the toughest thing you got? And they said, well, Navy SEAL officer training, but we don't need any. Frankly speaking, officer procurement, that's the fancy word for recruiting. The officers don't go through recruiting stations. They go through a different process, is such that it's just like HR. So in 1983, the U.S. Navy really wasn't interested in growing U.S. Navy SEALs. That's a special operations aspect of the Navy. They were divesting post-Vietnam from that. The Navy's core competencies are aircraft, ships, and submarines, and that's not pejorative or critical. It's just what they were focusing on to provide national security capabilities, against our adversaries, primarily the Soviet Union at that time. So it interested me because of the challenge. And frankly, it was at a time when President Reagan was rebuilding our nation to include the military. And I felt like, if not me, who? And someone needed to step up. My family really didn't have a background in military service, but I just felt like it was something that I needed to do. And so I put in my application for the officer candidate school program for a Navy SEAL officer, and that's how I got started.
So they said, no, thank you. Like, we don't need any, SEAL officers. And you were like, okay, I'd like to sign up for that one.
Oh, that's exactly right. So to add a little more detail, so I kept coming back to the table as they were there all week, and they said, well, bring us your transcripts. And then they looked at my transcripts and said, well, if you take 2 more physics classes, you'll qualify as a Navy nuclear power officer. You'll get a $10,000 bonus. You can drive a new car to officer candidate school and be a Navy nuclear power officer.
And you still said...
I didn't know what that was, but I said, no, what about these SEALs? And they finally just gave up by the end of the week and says, well, we've never processed one. This is in 1983. There were no books or movies about SEALs.
Right.
I said, that's all I was interested in. And so, there was an element, frankly, of Isaiah 6:8, and the voice said, whom shall we send and who shall go for us? And I thought that it was a worthy cause for our nation, especially with where we were in that era. You can recall that we'd had the failed hostage rescue mission of our hostages in Iran and a number of other things that happened around the world. So we were in a dark place. It was a low spot for the United States, and I just felt like I had a call to do it.
So you get
and I should say I'd never met a SEAL. Never read anything other than their, for the lack of a better term, their storied past from World War II as frogmen to Korea to Vietnam, but I'd never met one, and there were no books or movies.
So they, sorry, millennial.
Fine.
So SEALs their start was in World War II.
They were the Navy frogmen.
I've got to do some research.
Navy combat demolitions units, and then UDT, and they were the ones that would go on the beaches before the landings. As an example, we just celebrated the landings there at D-Day, and so for several nights in advance, the frogmen were doing reconnaissance on the landing zones so they could map out the best places to land, and they went in early to destroy the obstacles so those landing craft could land, and they took extreme casualties. So they were there first, and that's not a point of importance of what the nation asked us to do. Relative to that, the training, once they started those units in that era, was based on the premise that an individual is capable of 10 times more what they think they really are. and there was a mindset and a physical endurance aspect. So as you might guess, you had to have an aptitude to be good in the water because we come from the sea, i.e. sea, air, and land. And then that capability was, of course, used in the Pacific as well. So that was the beginning of the Navy Frogmen, which was the beginning of the Navy SEALs that were ultimately first created under that name in 1962 with SEAL Team 1 and SEAL Team 2 under the direction of John F. Kennedy, President Kennedy at the time.
Now, here's an Anise point that we're all going to love. For as revered as a unit as they are, to start with frogs and then go to SEALs, usually you're looking for panthers, tigers, lions, sharks.
Well, I think it's an acronym.
I realize that, but I just, I was just thinking we could have a little more fierce mascots here.
So,
point well taken.
Wow.
I don't think we'll be changing the name.
No.
And if I could on that, I want to elaborate on a point. The term SEAL Team, it was by design in 1961 when it was all being conceptualized when they were created in early 62, and they were saying, well, what's this unit going to be named? What's this going to look like? What was really unique to us is we were the only what's called warfare specialty, recognizing you got aviation, surface ship, submarine in the Navy. We were Naval Special Warfare. We're the only warfare specialty where officers and enlisted went through the exact same training. Ergo, the uniqueness that we have is we have the exact same warfare pin, gold.
Right.
Normally, say, in the aviation, the surface ship, and the submarine community, the officers are gold, the enlisteds are silver. To have it differentiate. We said, no, we're the same. We engage in close quarter combat. The officers are immersed with the men on the missions. We lead them, we plan them, we conduct them, and we come home with them. So for that reason, we all wear the gold trident, and we adopted the name Team. Team is really analogous to, say, a squadron, a battalion, a ship. It is a whole unit. It is not just a small group of men. So a SEAL Team is, in fact, just think SEAL Battalion or SEAL Squadron. So that's our name, and it sometimes throws people off. Thank you for letting me share that with you.
No,
So-
this is like a History Channel episode, and I'm loving it.
Absolutely.
College credit will be given.
Yes.
This is why they
There's a
allow
test
us,
afterwards, okay?
This
That's
is why they
failing.
allow us to do this podcast, because all of our questions are general questions that we're just curious
And
about.
I want to
But
add something else.
Please.
In the SEAL Team, not everybody's a SEAL. We have a complete infrastructure of support, and we couldn't do our missions if it wasn't for that complete infrastructure of the other sailors and service members and civilians that are in that unit.
Right.
So it's a team sport.
And I'm glad you mentioned that. You touched on one thing and I'm fascinated by this. I'm fascinated by how the mind and the body work. And when you say that people are capable of 10 times more than they think, isn't that what the BUDS training is all about? And that's what pushes people to their limits. You mentioned, before we went on air, you mentioned something about even some spectacular athletes struggle to make it through that training. What is that? It's a week, right? Or is it 2 weeks, or the Hell Week that they refer to?
Hell Week's typically a week. That's correct, and that's early on.
Yeah.
And it's famous.
Right.
But there's all sorts of other things that go on in SEAL training that will help folks realize they don't have the standards to complete it or can't meet the standards. But back at a high level, that is a key aspect. And you're alluding to an experience that I had. I started and finished in BUDS 133, reported in November after I was commissioned of 1984, and we graduated in July of 1985. We started with over 130 students. And graduated 18 of the original.
Oof.
We were a winter class, and but the standards are high for a reason for what our nation asks us to do.
Sure.
They need to be high, and I would offer that we don't make SEALs at SEALs training or in BUDS or Hell Week. We find them. They're made in the backyards, the ball fields, the kitchen tables of our nation's families and neighborhoods. We can't create them. And I came to that realization after well over 2 decades, watching all the different approaches we had, all the studies and analysis we did. Nope, it really came down to they showed up at the door and they were SEALs, or they weren't. We just helped find them. And back to the performance standards, there is one thing I observed as well, so we're talking world-class athletes, say, for instance, triathletes that you would think run, swim, bike, very aerobic, and SEAL training's got a large aspect of, of ocean and swimming and such, and, of course, running and calisthenics. You think, well, they'd be a perfect fit. Well, some of our first quitters were those world-class triathletes. Now, nothing against them. Well, my observation was I'm a lineman from the Murray State University football team. I'm accustomed to playing with pain. I'm accustomed to contact. I'm accustomed to not controlling my environment once that ball's hiked. So with respect to that, they were accustomed to controlling their environment. And again, that's not derogative or pejorative to that particular competitive sport. It is a tough sport, and I couldn't be a triathlete. But many of them quit right away because they couldn't control their environment. There, they take that away from you. You can't control your environment in the same way you can't control your environment in combat. You can merely prepare for that combat environment, and the majority of that is a mindset. But you have to make the physical standards as well, and they are top tier.
Sure.
That is a hallmark of the SEAL teams is our physical conditioning, because what our nation asks us to do.
Yeah. Well, that's amazing. Thinking through your time in the SEAL teams and being an officer, without asking about any specific missions, are there any individuals that stuck out to you in your career that really exemplified the standards of the SEALs? Somebody you think of on a regular basis that maybe you served with, maybe you don't even use their name, but just somebody that stuck out in what it was about them that was so unique to you?
Well, thanks for that question. There'd be too many to name. And I will tell you what I witnessed in Afghanistan and Iraq, and in Operation Just Cause, that was my first combat action, was a never quit mindset that all could be overcome. And the other thing was the audacity of every one of them that thought they could make a difference. Now, I want to qualify that.
I like that.
Not that they were bulletproof and invisible.
Right.
But I can make a difference with what I'm going to do on this mission. It will matter. Regrettably, some of those great Americans didn't come back, and so with respect to that, we honor them, and we owe them a debt of gratitude and their family that we can never fully repay. We can only honor with gestures of sincere gratitude and remembrance.
That's good.
Yes. I will tell you, many people ask me, you didn't ask this question, relative to the officer experience. Well, I'm a Navy SEAL and an Army Ranger.
I was going to ask you about that. I know it's
No-
going to
no-
get confusing because I saw
Yeah, it
the
does
Ranger
get-
pin on your jacket.
It does get
He
confusing.
is,
Yes.
instead of Barbie, he's the Ken. You know how Barbie had 8 different jobs? She was a veterinarian and a doctor and a dentist?
Yes.
We are looking
See?
at the male
There you go.
personification.
So I'm always fascinated by that, how it crosses over.
Okay. Well, it would be like this. In the officer corps, back to the leadership aspect,
Yes.
I didn't have the luxury of just being a Navy SEAL. So we had to be the leaders.
Okay.
And we're by act of Congress, by a commission, and our sworn oath, we are the leaders of the men that are assigned to us. So with respect to that, we have a lot of responsibility, and their lives are in your hands. So to make myself a better leader, I elected to go to Army Ranger School. Well, as you might guess, nobody does that. Here'd be a comparison. It'd be like, and I don't want to get crossways with the U of L UK crowd. It'd be like a UK lineman his junior year says, "I'm going to go over to U of L and letter 1 year, then come back to UK." No, nobody does it. You better believe he would have got some special treatment when he showed up over at U of L. I got some special treatment, but it made me a better leader because I knew I would lead in combat.
Yeah.
Just by watching what was going on in the world, and it paid huge dividends. And one thing you didn't ask, many people say, "Ed, what's the most difficult thing you ever did?"
Yeah.
And also I went through UK Special Air Service training, UK 22 SAS. They are a storied unit going back to World War II. The Brits are great soldiers. I'll tell you the hardest thing I ever did. It was a very solemn occasion. I put on my dress uniform with a chaplain and knocked on the door of Gold Star parents. That is
It's a
nothing
sobering moment, I'm
nothing can prepare you for that. Not SEAL training, not Ranger School, nothing can. And so that was a solemn moment when I delivered that news that they were now Gold Star family members. So Again, that's the toughest thing I ever did. Not that you asked that question, but
No.
just as a point of comparison.
It seems uniformly, military members or first responders, whenever I watch interviews with them, that is always kind of their repeated thing that you just said. The worst, hardest thing I've ever had to do was tell a parent, their child's dead or whatever it may be. So it seems pretty uniformly that people who have had to, for their profession, do that. It is extremely difficult.
Oh, yes, it has an impact on you that would be, that's a great point, to first responders and us, that would be very similar because of the nature of the loss. And, you feel, responsibility for it, even though you weren't there on that mission. You had nothing directly to do with it. The particular individual that and the family that I went to, they weren't from a SEAL team. I was identified to go provide that message to them, which was a very solemn moment and something you never forget. And so it impacts you, especially at a senior officer level. So the lives that you're dealing with, become very, for lack of a better term, prioritized. You don't forget that.
When you think about the span of your career, you think about the different operations you were part of, it seems like, to me, outsider looking in, that the special forces, including the SEALs, their deployments are much different than, let's say, an enlisted soldier in the Army, for instance, in that they might be shorter, more pinpointed, get in, get out type operations. Am I correct in saying that?
Yes, and we have different profiles. If I could, I'll
Please,
sort of frame it.
Yeah.
A couple things is throughout my career, many times we would deploy in the dark in the night, and we would come back in the dark of night because our nation asked us to. And I won't go into any further details. No fanfare, no press, no notoriety, and nobody joined for fame or fortune. Or celebrity status in those units. But again, we were supported by non-special operations. And the point of differentiation on terms, special forces refers specifically to U.S. Army.
Okay.
Special operations forces are the special ops.
Write that one down for me,
I
because
am.
I'm going to
gonna write
forget
that one down.
Special
yes.
operation is a generic term that would characterize them all, and we are specifically Naval Special Warfare. So we would come and go many times without any fanfare or notoriety. There's no families meeting us saying goodbye. My families don't know where we went to, and they don't know where we came back from.
Right.
At other times, say in Afghanistan and Iraq, our profiles were such on deployment because our operations were so high intensity that we were going out every night, and we went for we got the hardest target set. Why? Because it's what our nation asked us to do. Wow. So we had the most difficult target set. I'll give you an example. Think about this. We're in Afghanistan and Iraq. We get an indictment from the Department of Justice on a terrorist. So we are in a combat zone, bad guys all around. So we've got to go capture them so they can be turned over to federal law enforcement, like they were arrested in Louisville and taken to Gitmo.
Right.
Well, it's a whole lot easier in that combat zone just to engage in some kind of military operation, to engage them in a firefight or, drop a bomb. It is a far different complexity and high-risk operation to go and capture them, to bring them back alive to face Department of Justice, trial.
Yeah.
So just that as an example, our missions were very, very, very complex, very high risk. And so with respect to that, very high tempo. And so we would deploy in windows that would recognize the fatigue that would take place, and we'd rotate. And then plus there's an experience level. It's just like playing a ball game. So we'd rotate our forces through in such a manner so we benefited from the experiences we were gaining, getting better all the time. And then also in the knowledge we gained about the battle space, how the enemy operated, what elements we had to operate in. And so, again, the high intensity ones where the conventional units wouldn't necessarily have that high of an op tempo. They were doing other things that we needed them to do. And that's not pejorative, critical, or a better than nowness. They just had a different mission set, and their tempo was different than us. So we're going out every night.
It's one of the things I love about doing this podcast is being able to sit with somebody and hear firsthand accounts of different stories. And I had the opportunity to speak to a young lady named Jessica Buchanan. And Jessica was held captive by Somali pirates I want to say 15 years ago. And she now is a spokesperson for the Navy SEAL Foundation. But she describes this at the end of a 90-day period of being held in the desert by her captors, a night sleeping. There's no sound, nothing much going on. All of a sudden, there's a series of flashes, and then there's a Navy SEAL team carrying her out. It was very, very dark. It was very quiet, and it was very, very fast. And just her amazement at how that was carried out, not knowing who any of these people were, but she was amazed at how fast, quiet, and precise it was to end that situation.
And that very much illuminates when you asked me the question, the different comparison to the deployments.
Right.
And that unit would have deployed unknown to their family and friends where they were going and what they were going to do, and carried out that mission. They would have planned and prepared, but the success for that mission, if I could, was way upstream. You know, when those youngsters went through BUDS, because it's a young men's game, and then they transitioned to the unit that they were at, and that particular SEAL unit of a SEAL team conducted that in the dark in the night at the direction of our nation.
Yes.
And that particular order would have come from the president. To allow us to conduct that mission. I'm very familiar with it. I'll say no more.
Okay.
But to say, fortunately, not all the missions we've done have made the media, because sometimes it gives away our playbook.
Right.
In this case, that one was celebrated, and our family, with so much gratitude from them, and we're going to put that one in the win column.
Yeah.
But again, to us, it's just another day in the office.
Yeah, and I hope you don't mind me mentioning that. She's been on this podcast and talked about it a lot, so her experience was one. And I appreciate, with Jessica, I appreciate how she has given back to the SEAL community since then.
Yes, a number of folks have, not to dwell, say Captain Phillips.
Yes.
With the famous operation there with the simultaneous sniper shots that were taken. And I could go into some detail about that, but of course there's a movie about it and so forth and so on. But I will not disclose anything classified, because I still have a clearance, and I will abide by the agreements I have made with our U.S. government as they pertain to such. But thanks for celebrating that, because that really illuminates, the commitment and the degree. The American citizens should be proud that those units are out there and the people that are out there that support them. And again, because it's not just SEALs, it took a whole lot of folks behind the scenes to get us on and off that target and successfully conduct that mission, to include other services. It was joint ultimately.
And it's the glorification of the media to these teams is good and bad, in my opinion. I hate that it sensationalizes some of the wrong aspects, if I can say that. And I think it tells it gives a false narrative, especially in the movies and some of the other things. But it's not a big drawn. Often, I would imagine it's not a big drawn out firefight in the middle of the afternoon in the middle of a city. But it is these well orchestrated, well planned, in the dark of night, as you described, missions that most people will never hear about.
That's true, and they become, Hollywood glamorizes them, and so like many folks in the first responders world, when they're watching a movie about first responders, law enforcement, or fire, EMS, and such, they get white knuckles, like that's not really the way you do it. So I rest assured, I don't spend a lot of time watching movies and shows about the SEALs, because that's not the way we do it. And it glamorizes things and sometimes diminishes the real nature of what we do. But it's Hollywood.
Yes,
it's what it's what they do.
Did the Osama bin Laden situation?
I've got a question with that one too.
Sure, yeah,
I've been waiting.
I don't want to steal your question, so
No.
I'll make this very general. But did that situation, let me ask it very generally. Was that good for the SEALs, or did that ultimately make the job of being a SEAL more difficult because of the how much it was publicized?
I would say, regrettably, there were disclosures subsequent to that operation that don't really help us.
Sure.
They would have given away our playbook in some ways. They would have exposed, without going into too much detail, units, elements, capabilities
Right.
by people that wanted to capitalize on, I'm the smartest person in the room, or, look what we did, when they really didn't have a whole lot to do with it. If I could I go back to that mission?
Please, yes.
All right, so what I'd like to share with the listeners is, so once upon a time, 9/11 occurs. And so again, nobody in the SEALs joined for fame, fortune, or at least the folks I served with, to be celebrities. And so we made a vow. We made a commitment, would be a better way to put it, that Osama bin Laden was our target. Now, how did we get to that point roughly 10 years later? We got that way with, I would call through our book of business. What we did on the battlefield globally, albeit that the rescue that you talked about was post Osama bin Laden raid, but we did things like that on the battlefield. Very difficult precision operations for our nation of the highest degree of challenge and risk, and we built a book of business. So when it came time to make a decision, remember the leadership, as in the President and Secretary of Defense, they could have used a whole menu. We could have sent in a Ranger Battalion. We could have sent in Army Special Forces. We could have sent in the Marines. We could have done all these different things. We could have dropped a precision bomb. We could have sent a Tomahawk. But they looked at what the capabilities were, and what their options were, and they elected to go with that unit because we had built I'm using the term book of business. We had built a reputation, might be a better way to put it.
Right.
We had built a brand of what we were capable of doing.
Okay.
But it was the commitment we made. Nobody from the Pentagon, nobody from the White House said, you guys 10 years later are going to have the mission. No, we made that commitment to ourselves. So it goes back to really what I would call the culture of our organization, a mindset. It was ours to do for our nation. And so we are fortunate enough ultimately to get identified and assigned that mission. Now back to your question. Yes, we would have preferred folks said less about it, and because again we give away potentially our playbook to our adversaries.
Right. Even technology that was exposed. I mean, other things that were
what we call techniques and procedures.
Right.
And by just some let's say some dialogue that was out there did not help us.
Yes.
But again, we serve at the discretion of our great nation.
Right, absolutely, and ultimately the job was done. So,
yes, and then there were another day at the office. Then we just get on with it.
Right.
Now here's my question. Now we have to.
Now there's been a lot of build up to this question.
It's not,
so I hope
just
it's a good question.
It's just it may be very dumb actually.
50-50.
And I don't know if it's a SEAL question or just a history question. But you spoke about different missions is the target either you're capturing or what would be the term? Neutralize. Who decides that? Like, is that when you say like, oh, it was President Obama who said neutralize that? What goes behind that? Now keep in mind, when was he? When did they get Osama?
2011 May.
11.
Yes.
So I was. Yes, I was a junior in high school. So forgive me for not knowing historical stuff because this wasn't my main my main priority at 17, unfortunately. But I just, how is that decided, I guess, is the...
Well, I don't mean to sound like an academic, but it depends. Yeah. But a mission of that level, of that national importance, would be approved and directed by the president.
Okay.
So they would be briefed on every detail. Mm-hmm. And then, as I said, before they even get to that point, they would consider a number of options of how best to achieve the outcome we desired. Mm-hmm. Then, when it got to the point of let's evaluate the different options, a plan would be presented, and the decision makers would determine that. And that would be the Secretary of Defense and Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff would give advice to the President for a mission of that high level.
Yeah. There's
different levels of missions.
Right.
But there are the ones that ultimately have to be determined by the president and directed by.
And, see, this was long-term, Matt. Long game here.
Yes.
It's great to know this information because we do have the presidential election coming up.
Yes.
And we need to know what our, not everyone is so great about knowing what the president can and cannot do or is responsible or not responsible for.
They tend to make up their own rules as far as what they think that the president can please.
Yeah, so this is a good thing where it's like, no, the president is involved in these situations.
And back to the language where you said, well, neutralize, capture, and so forth, so on. Mm-hmm. We are told, what the outcome will be. We want you to plan and conduct a mission in order to, and then they'll provide the term, and that's defined in Department of Defense terminology. If we have a question, we'll go back and ask, but typically it's we understand the terminology. They will tell us what they want the outcome to do. Then we will develop a plan and present it to them. This is what it would look like if you want us to conduct this mission and achieve this outcome. Here's the risks and things to consider. Yeah, so there's an established process.
Yeah.
And that's why we go to the War College and some other schools. I mean, there is an established protocol to do all that. It's not just folks winging it at their desk. The American public should be happy with that. I mean, there's a rigor that goes into those processes.
Right.
How often does a mission go to plan?
Oh, gracious. We continuous. We're planning right now. So
no, but I mean, how often does it go the way that you think it's going to go?
Never.
That's
Never.
fair.
It's a point of departure.
That's fair.
And that's what your training's all about.
Yeah.
And the unit cohesion upstream and the individual, their ability, to carry out what the intent of the mission is, because it will change.
And I asked that for a very important reason.
The enemy gets a vote.
Because exactly. Yeah. And I think when people hear these stories of these missions, okay, they planned it, it went exactly according to the way they planned it, and they accomplished their goal. But I think what's so important to point out about these individuals is how much they adapt and how quickly they adapt and they overcome in every one of these situations, because I have to imagine every one of them starts with one mindset and quickly shifts.
Yes, and the key thing is that everyone is empowered to understand what the purpose of the mission is at a high level. And then you're going to train for contingencies on the mission, on the operation, but you will never be able to identify all of them because the enemy and the conditions get a vote.
Yes.
So the key is the unit cohesion and the individual's ability to adapt to that, improvise, and overcome.
Right.
So if anybody tells you it went exactly as planned, they're probably full of it. Probably something they don't want to share, or it's classified, and that's fine.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it doesn't.
Even you look at the, and I know it's a movie, but the Captain Phillips movie and dealing with the seas the way they were, dealing with all the conditions that were constantly changing, I have to imagine there was a lot of shifting in that process.
Yes, and again, for the folks to just be reminded, the key aspect of that was the simultaneous sniper shots.
Yes.
As some of the terrorists were becoming agitated, and there was concern they were going to execute Captain Phillips.
Yeah.
As the negotiations weren't going in their favor, but so simultaneous, and those snipers weren't sitting side by side. There was and nobody said 1, 2, 3, shoot.
Yeah.
So there was a synergy based on their training, and they understand. And it might be hard to comprehend, but to say that, again, those snipers were on a large U.S. Navy ship that in itself is moving with the sea state.
At an opposite time or opposing time.
Not synchronized, we'll say that.
Right.
And they understood and thought in such a manner, their mindset was the same, that now was the time to shoot. And so that occurred simultaneously, which allowed us to rescue Captain Phillips and the other folks. Yeah,
that's incredible.
Yes,
absolutely.
But it's a tribute back to the great Americans, as I said, that we don't make them at Buds. They come from the ball fields, the backyards, the kitchen tables, the neighborhoods of our great nation.
Yes.
I want to share something else too with the listeners. I would often tell the parents at Bud's graduation, once I figured out, as I said, really what this is all about by that time at the strategic level leadership, is that the toughest job in U.S. Navy SEALs, being one of these young Navy SEALs or an officer, it's being mom.
Oh, I'm sure.
Second toughest job is a spouse.
Yeah.
That's right. So they're hand in hand.
Wow.
Those are the tough jobs. Yeah, they carry a burden.
You had a question?
Yeah, but I lost it.
That's okay. So how do you, and forgive me for jumping around a little bit, but this is something I'm always concerned with. How do you keep, let's say you have a team that you're in charge of, and they're going to hear the news. They're going to hear things on TV about maybe the commander-in-chief and something that they said, or they're going to maybe hear about things happening in Congress that they're frustrated with, or different things. How do you keep their mindset right, and how do you keep their faith in their government if they're hearing things that they may say are contrary to their mission?
Well, I'd go back to,
But I'm not talking about any particular administration or anything. I'm just it in my mind. You watch the news, you get frustrated from time to time. How do you keep that clear?
Yeah, certainly that's the case. I'll go back. It's interesting you asked that question just after I mentioned about what really makes a seal. They're made before we find them. The nature of what we do in our culture is we are focused. I don't know if you've heard this the famous theory. There's three kinds of people in the world. There's sheep, there's sheepdogs, and there's wolves.
Yes.
Okay. Seals are sheepdogs.
Got it.
We don't care what letter jacket the adversary wears. If they're bad people and they mean harm to our sheeps, we're on it.
Yeah.
So with respect to that, there's an interesting dynamic that I observed that we block out everything else. It's noise. Interesting. We don't care. What we care about is how good can we be on this next mission? How far can I push myself? How good a shot can I be? How well can I shoot, move, and communicate? How well can I do what I do so I can make a difference on the next mission, the next operation? Because it will come. It might not be on the schedule. And our history has proven that. So it is a dynamic in our culture where we just block that noise out.
Yeah.
And then we as officers, we do take efforts to shield our assigned service members from that. And so that doesn't mean you block out news and communication from no. You just make sure we remain focused on what our role is.
Right.
The national security of our great nation and the history of our service. Honor the ones that have gone before us because we stand on their shoulders.
Yeah.
And the missions like you just mentioned, a couple of them that we've conducted, and we're going to build on that because our nation expects that from us. We don't do politics.
Yeah.
We're focused on the mission. What do we do for our great nation?
Matt, I've got something for you here now.
Okay.
Uh-oh.
So he just
Let's
said
make it good.
He just equated the Navy SEALs to the sheepdogs, correct? Now, we touched on it a couple of times in this podcast, but you have a very contentious relationship with my dog. And,
Is he a cat person?
no, he gives my dog a hard time because she is really just a sloth.
Yeah, she's large, and I have to walk around. She's in our office every day, so yes. Poor Rue.
But they love each other in all reality. But she is half Great Pyrenees, and Great Pyrenees are sheep guardians.
Yes.
So my dog is closer to being a Navy SEAL than
I
you will ever be, Matt.
Yes.
So take that home with you today.
That's a stretch. You worked hard on that one.
Ouch.
Yeah. You see how this goes sometimes, Ed? This is
ouch.
Yeah.
It's a contact sport.
It is a contact sport for sure.
Broadcasting's a contact sport. I didn't know.
I'm so curious. I have a million questions about this because it's anybody getting back to what we were talking about before. You can't go into these missions with any doubt, correct?
That's correct. You got to have the audacity to think you're going to win. There can be no doubt. You've eliminated that way upstream in the screening, selection, and training process. Oh no, you're going in to win.
Right.
You will be successful.
Right. Because as soon as that doubt sets in, you have hesitation, and then.
Oh yes, yeah. You're at a disadvantage. Now,
to
that point, we officers have to be very mindful of the vibe in the unit, and so you have to know when you're ready to go and when you're not. So you got to be able to. I'm going to use the phrase "read the room" would be an understatement. But you got to teach, coach, and mentor all the time, and you've got to have your antennas up. Otherwise, you're going to have a disaster.
Does it have? And you don't have to answer this question if you don't want to. Does it happen where people need to be removed from teams for those reasons?
Well, let's just say at times we identify folks that it's probably for them to take a timeout.
Yeah.
And other times we identify folks that for something's changed, click, and they don't meet standard, and it's not about being ruthless. Yeah. It's like you're gonna hurt the unit, or you're gonna hurt the team. You move them to the side.
Go take a breather.
There you go.
Yeah.
You better be tuned into that. That's a great point you bring up, because everything that counts can't be counted. Everything that be counted doesn't count. So it's not just how well you're able to do your physical fitness and your shooting and so forth. There's a mindset and a performance that comes with that. So you better be tuned into that, and that's what we're responsible for as the officers, as the leaders. Yeah. It's a burden you better be mindful of.
Because they still have families.
Yes, they do.
They still have things going on at home.
Oh, yes, they do.
Their kids are still making mistakes that they're worried about. Their spouses are still trying to get things done and dealing with things at home that they wish they could be there and help with.
Hey,
so,
could I share something with you?
Please.
I'm glad you brought that up. We figured out that our secret weapon to stay tuned into that wasn't the psychologist. It wasn't the master chief, which is like the command sergeant major.
Yeah.
It was the chaplain.
Ooh.
Why don't you hold that thought? Those operators, those, we call them pipe swingers, those tough, hard-nosed folks, they weren't going to go talk to the skipper. They weren't going to talk to the XO. They weren't going to talk to the master chief, but they would go talk to the chaplain. Why? Safe place.
Yeah.
So the chaplain became our major antenna to find out what was going on. Now, the chaplains were such, and this is, I'm going to say this in plural, real tribute to them, they kept us tuned in to our blind spot, because the chaplains would find out, just to your point, hey, there's something, we'd call it in the rear. There's something going on at home, that's impacting them, and might be time for them to take a breather. And this individual, whether it's a problem with a child or a spouse, whatever it might be, they kept us tuned in.
Yeah.
And so help cover that blind spot. So I want to get a shout out to the chaplains there. That
they may be saving lives there.
that you better believe they were. That being and saving families.
Yeah.
Equally important, because there's a lot of fractures. We had an extremely high divorce rate, and all the stresses that come with the.
Oh, I'm sure.
I'll give an example. I didn't live at home for 10 years after 9/11.
Wow.
10 years.
10 years.
That's right. What happened was we had a very small number of officers, so we would be moved around almost like a shell game. This assignment here, this assignment, this deployment, and so forth. That's not a point of importance. But with that, and that applied to others as well, there becomes a stress and a strain.
Yeah.
Now, I did get home on leave and could visit and so forth and so on, but our military was really stressed, post 9/11 for quite a period. In fact, there was a stop loss on officers. We couldn't get out, for a given period, because it's, part of the, part of your contract and obligation when you take the oath. And again, I was proud to do that, and none of that's with regret or complaint.
Sure.
I just want to share
it's just the nature of it.
The listeners, yes. And I appreciate your question about the stresses that are unseen, that don't go on the target. They're not part of the operation.
Yeah.
Because the key infrastructure that supported that service member wasn't, whatever we deployed with from the unit or at the base. It was the family. The family. That was the key support infrastructure that mattered the most.
Is being a SEAL a generational thing? In other words, are there many who, my dad was a SEAL, my grandfather was a SEAL?
Well,
Is it like the NFL? No.
No.
Yeah, there is an element of that.
Okay.
I misspoke. I misunderstood your question. Yes, there is.
Okay.
Yes, there is. It's a pass down. It's an interesting dynamic. It sure is.
But it doesn't weigh into their ability to make the team.
No. In fact, you might get a little special attention.
Oh, really?
I know your brother. I know your dad.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. You might get a little special love and attention.
Yeah. Could work against you.
It's exactly right. It probably will. That's my
Yeah.
observation. But you're right. There's some tradition there with some folks that have fallen in the footsteps of other family members. And again, that's not easy to do.
Do we see, one of the things that we're always concerned with, and you go a period of time where a major conflict ends, where Afghan operations end, and there's not a major conflict going on, at least publicly, that people talk about, and then you see recruiting numbers start to dip, and you see things start to fall behind. Is that cyclical? Does that come and go over the years, like in your experience, like the people signing up to maybe not even for the Navy SEALs, but maybe for just in general service?
Well, I think interesting, the recent data, and I say recent, over the past 5 years, we're seeing an extraordinary decline in recruiting. Extraordinary decline. And then the result of that is we have an aging military force, because you have less young folks come in, so the average age is getting older, and that's not judgmental. There's a lot of experience with those folks. We rely on it, but it's a real challenge. I think the numbers indicate, say in 2023, only the Marine Corps and the Space Force, which has Space Force has a very small aspect of highly technical folks that they go after, the way I understand it, is they're the only ones that met their recruiting goals, and the Marine Corps had drawn down. The other, the Army, Navy, and Air Force fell well below their recruiting goals. So what we're seeing is a real challenge. I think the data indicates only about 1 in 4 individuals are even eligible to join the service without some kind of waiver. The biggest issue is obesity. There's other elements with drugs, inability
Sure.
to pass the security clearance. So we're in a real challenging era right now with recruiting. I was never in recruiting during my assignments. Mercifully, it's tough. It's tough business. It's really tough. But we are very challenged. Recognizing in 1973 we moved away from conscription selective service and went to the all-volunteer force.
Right.
And so that's been the most challenging few years since that transition, and that is a significant issue for national security.
It's one of those things, and I've spoken with a lot of lawmakers in a lot of different states about this topic, and the selective service piece in particular, because you're starting to see legislation pop up in different states where they're saying young men are, and I may butcher this a little bit, but young people are not signing up for selective service at all. They're getting their cards in the mail, and they're just simply not doing it. So states are moving to more of a forced situation where they're being signed up.
Isn't it legally required for men?
It is legally required,
Okay.
but it's not enforced.
Okay.
The states, I believe it, and this is where I could get it wrong. I believe it needs to be enforced on a federal level, but the states have some way in there.
Gotcha.
But it's becoming a little more strict, and I don't know if that helps the situation, if that hinders the situation with recruiting, but I'm interested to see how that will all play out as the states start approaching this in particular. So I don't know if you have any insight in that, but I'm just curious in this recruiting process. Something's got to change, and I think it may just be the mindset of our country as far as the honor of serving, but in integrating that maybe more into the schools and integrating that more into the social fabric of our country. But I hope to see that change. I hope to see that pivot, and I think we have the potential to get back to a high level of recruitment again.
Well, I admire your optimism. And again, never been in recruiting, so but I'm going to unpack that a little bit. Now, remember, 1973, we moved away from selective service and moved to the all-volunteer force. And as we just pointed out, data indicates this has been the toughest years. And our services really are decreasing in numbers. We're not building the force up in numbers. We've been decreasing in numbers. Now, at a high level, and not to turn us into a war college class, but the U.S. went on the direction years ago of making a decision. We're going to go for qualitative comparison ability versus our adversaries instead of quantitative. In other words, we're always going to have better educated,
Right.
High
standards,
more
yeah.
skilled. Our all of our weapon systems, our aircraft, our ships, and our submarines are all going to be so much better. We can afford
Yeah.
to have fewer, and we can still field enough capability to meet national security and foreign policy goals. I want to point something out. Foreign policy and national security are inseparable. They're mutually supporting.
Okay.
You can't talk about one without talking about the other. If you are, you're an amateur. All right, so shifting back to that has largely decreased because of the aggressive nature that we've had intellectual property theft and technology theft by our adversaries and their aggressive growth programs versus us, to include relationships and alliances that give you sort of a force multiplier by the fact that you, for instance, just recently, Russia and North Korea signed a mutual defense pact. That's huge.
Right.
Previously our war plans for North Korea was to fight North Korea. Now you're fighting North Korea and potentially Russia as well. That'd be an understatement.
Totally different war.
To say a game changer. If I could, also relative to recruiting, what we're seeing is there is a correlation, it appears, between folks that are willing to sign up for the service, volunteer, that have a parent that was a service member.
Right.
Well, that population is decreasing.
Yeah.
It's continuing to decreasing, which is having the effect, again, based on the analysis, of you have less folks of their children, because there's less children with veteran parents that are volunteering for the force. So that creates another dynamic that's influencing recruiting. So we're in some uncharted waters with respect to that. And now back to the question about, well, selective service and, the attitudes about it, I would offer there is a cultural issue, and that it does appear we have a corrosion of our culture and the commitment to what our nation stands for. And it would be beneficial if our senior leadership could better articulate the force for good that our U.S. military has been. We have freed more people. We have made more peace than war. We have done more good than any other force in world history. And so it's regrettable that's not celebrated more, and would potentially invite folks, to be interested in military service.
Yeah.
And so one last thing.
Yep.
The other thing that's changed that folks need to remember, once upon a time, you had time when you expected, there's going to be a big world war. Well, the speed, precision, and lethality of weapon system to include cyber.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The cyber war potentially, it makes it such that if you figure, we got to start selective service, we got to get them through all the in-processing, boot camp, training, you're talking months downstream. Do we really have that time anymore?
No.
Is that a deeply flawed concept?
Yeah.
If I was, back as Commodore Gallrein or, Captain Gallrein at a strategic leadership position, I'd be advocating that we do a war game and factor that in.
Yeah.
And again, that's largely computer driven. A lot of data is entered by very smart people. And so what would really happen if we had to go from what I call a cold start of a pending, world war? How fast and what would really happen if we had to re-implement selective service, i.e. the draft, train, equip, and prepare to deploy those forces? I'm not sure we have that kind of time anymore. Because of speed and lethality. One other thing, and because of the media. The information, be it disinformation or other, spreads so fast and changes sentiment. Now, I want to go back to something that's very important. Why did we go away from the draft and selective service? And again, I'll fill in the blank here. It won't be a question for y'all. But you might recall in Vietnam, the U.S. populace became very disenchanted.
Yes.
What turned the page in the Vietnam War? This is a test question. All right.
What turned the page to make us decide that we needed to go a different direction?
We're going to get out, change the politics of the nation, and ultimately we moved away from selective service.
It became politically unpopular.
Why? What is it the adversary did? I'm going to give you a teaser. They did something, an operation. It was called the what offensive? A Tet offensive. Bingo. They were decimated.
Yeah.
They were tactically defeated soundly.
Yeah.
They were the adversary.
Okay.
The Viet Cong in the North, we destroyed them.
Okay.
But what did we lose? We lost the information operation on the streets of America.
Yeah.
The U.S. public became disenchanted with the war.
Mm-hmm.
And look how that changed. And so the happiest people in the world were our more what you call larger nation state adversaries at the time. And of course the ones now, because we moved away from the draft and selective service where we'd have a force in standing, which is, remember, I want to punctuate something here for you and the listeners. The sweet spot for senior professional military officers like myself was deterrence. We want to stay in the deterrence phase.
Right.
We don't want to go to war. We're the ones that bleed.
Yep.
I'm the one that's going to knock on the door of that parent, tell them they're now a Gold Star family member, which is, again, as I shared, the most difficult thing I've ever done, and you'll never forget it. It's a burden you will carry for the rest of your life. So with respect to that, we want to stay in deterrence. I'm not so sure that we're on as high ground in deterrence as we could be with, sort of the way things are unfolding relative to our ability to field combat power.
Yeah.
And so the selective service to draft pertains.
So, and we're going to run out of time here in a minute, so I'm gonna fast forward just a minute if that's okay. USA Cares, we get hundreds of calls every month from veteran families in crisis, some active duty families in crisis from all over the country. A lot of these men and women are at the point where they are getting ready to depart the military, or they have recently departed the military. This has been a transition that we've witnessed firsthand, can be brutal for a lot of these families. It's a very big shift, particularly for people who have served 15, 20 years. Maybe this is the only job they've had out of high school, and now they're going into a world that doesn't quite understand them, speaks a different language, acts a little differently, maybe has different standards. And there's been a real challenge for a lot of these men and women to adapt. As someone who's been an officer, as someone who has served for a lengthy period of time, what kind of advice, encouragement could you give these men and women, many of whom listen to this podcast, from your experience, from your life, what would you say to them?
Well, I'm going to reflect on, I served at 7 SEAL teams and SEAL groups, operational units. First of all, I would tell those folks is it is in your best interest to start sooner rather than later. Start building the transition relationships well before you've even made the final commitment that you're going to depart the service, and whatever the circumstances might be, separate, retire, and so forth and so on. Start building those relationships if you don't have them already. If you have them, expand on them. You never know when one of them may pay off, whether it's a job opportunity, a career opportunity. I do want to go back and use a different term than you used in terms of their job. The service members will appreciate this. They have been in a cultural bubble.
Yeah.
Yes.
In that endeavor they've been in. I won't call it a career. I won't call it a job. I'm going to call it a commitment. They are different than, and that's not a better than thou way.
Right.
Nope.
But in that bubble, they are different than their contemporaries out here in the civilian world. They had to live by different standards. They operated in different environments, whether they were combat elements or support elements or whatever they did. But we were all still had to prescribe to the Uniform Code of Military Justice and other standards that pertain to what we did in the service, and they operated on a unit level. So they had an infrastructure there where they relied on folks. They knew what to expect. There were standards that were established. This is how we do business. That is not always the case in the civilian world. So that's going to be a little, I'm going to say the word in italics, disorienting to them.
Yes.
And it's a bit of adjustment. The way you overcome that is with relationships. Find the place where you're a cultural fit and start that early. And do not think it is in any point of for lack of a better term, of being a lesser person to reach out for that, to ask that question, to make that call. There are people that have a passion for wanting to be that person on the other end of the phone, or to help you, or to assist you and your family for you to be successful. And do not underestimate the characteristics and qualities that you bring that are valued, outside the military. You bring a lot that employers, communities, neighborhoods are going to value. Don't underestimate that. Some of it doesn't neatly fit on your resume.
Right.
It doesn't neatly fit on a job application. But when that person makes your acquaintance, when you have that chance to have that one-on-one, when you have that chance to build a relationship, it will come through. So expand on that, embrace it, and leverage that, because you bring a lot to the communities that you're going to be moving to as you leave the bubble of the U.S. military, Department of Defense.
I love that. As we wrap up, I want to give you a chance. Is there anything else you want to make sure you mention today?
No, I want to thank you, USA Cares, and what y'all do out there. You're unsung heroes. You make a difference. I'm a fan. Again, your leadership, Mr. Bill Roby Sr., Trace Chesser, and I go way back. And so I applaud you for what you're doing for our great nation. You're a force multiplier. You're a key enabler. Help those families. I want to encourage those families, help USA Cares be 10 foot tall. Reach out to them. They're here for you. And that's what they do. That's their commitment. That's their passion. So, again, let me know how I can help.
Thank you. Ed, it's been an honor.
Thank you. I enjoyed it. Appreciate the time.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Again, if you are new to the USA Cares podcast, check it out, usacarespodcast.org. There are well more than 100 episodes that you can check out. Learn more about USA Cares at usacares.org. If you want to support the organization, hit that donate button, and we appreciate that. Until next time, we look forward to being with you. Thank you, and hit that subscribe button and make this part of your weekly routine.